Welcome to Morgana Radio, where every week your host Morgana Ray interviews the world's most fascinating thought leaders on money, love, and magic. Now here's Morgana Ray.
Welcome to a new episode of Morgana Radio. Today we are living the dream with Laura Gisborne. Now, full disclosure, if you are listening to this as an audio podcast on iTunes, this is also being recorded as a video. So if you want to see what we look like and what we're doing with our hands and our faces, go to morganaradio.com so that you can see the video too. And it's also to get the links that we mention and the free stuff and all that is at morganaradio.com. In the meanwhile, fasten your seatbelts. Laura is amazing. I've known her for years, and the reason I invited her, as I am interviewing truly the world's most fascinating thought leaders on money, love, and magic, Laura is a super successful entrepreneur, and the magic here is that she is living in perfect alignment with her legacy. And that's what I find so fascinating. Besides, she's just, this wonderful, warm, woman who looks a little like she could be a fairy that you would meet in Ireland. But for any of you listening or watching who have had the dream of living really well in a beautiful house with a passionate tribe of people who you help and who appreciate you and changing the lives of people around the world, that's what Laura lives, and that's what she's going to help us with today. So I actually have her bio in that extra large print for my old lady eyes. Boy, is that a surprise. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to give you some of the details of today's guest. Laura Gisborne is a highly successful business expert with over 20 years experience, from structuring and selling small boutique businesses to owning a multi-million-dollar wine and real estate empire. Laura has owned 9 businesses, her first when she was only 23 years old. She is an internationally recognized speaker, and she serves as a business consultant for business leaders and entrepreneurs in a wide range of industries. The innovative business model of her company, Legacy Leaders Global, exemplifies that companies can be both profitable and purposeful. Through her initiatives, thousands of women and children are receiving regular contributions in multiple countries across 5 continents. She has served as a guardian ad litem for foster children through CASA, a parent education coordinator for family outreach. She's a board member for Habitat for Humanity. She is on the Sedona School District, and she's part of the Global Women's Empowerment Fund. She is the author of the books Stop the Spinning, Move from Surviving to Thriving, and Limitless Women. She's been featured as a guest expert on both CBS and ABC, as well as on the national hit show The List. And you can learn more about her work at lauragisborne.com. The link is at morganaradio.com. And we'll keep referring back to that link and we'll spell it out. But I want to dive in. So first,
thank you.
You are a very busy entrepreneur. So how do you make all this happen with this kind of this ease and grace in managing business, making money, and having an impact?
Priorities and focus, right? I think every person, the great equalizer for all of us, Morgana, is that we have the same amount of time each day. So how we choose to spend that is really the differentiator, right? That's how we see people that have a measure of success that we look up to and say, gosh, I would like to do what that person's doing. It's really about where they're spending their time. Now, that's something that's easy to say when you've reached a certain level of success or financial independence, and So I love what you're doing with your work of really helping people heal money stories and heal the places where, it's never about the money, right? And yet without having that piece handled, it's really tough to do the work that we're here to do in the world. So I love what you're doing and how you're out serving others with getting that piece really building that relationship with money. That's lovely. I was just reading something that you wrote a couple of days ago about your money honey. I was thinking about how fun it is to be with you in person. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to be here.
My pleasure. So for the person who's the before picture, who doesn't have a lot of resources to delegate and is still trying to create a career they love, how would you recommend they get started?
Well, I think what's important is that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I've had 9 companies, but I didn't have all of them all at the same time. Right. So sometimes while you're working on some project, you have to work on nights and weekends on something else. And that's really the place where getting very clear about what's important to you becomes paramount in this conversation. Right. So if somebody has a day job, and there's nothing wrong with that. A job is wonderful. It's offering you the opportunity to pay your bills and be balanced. But if somebody's in that position and then they're looking for how do I move to the next level or do something different? Sorry, I have such a weird reflection going on here today. How do I move to the next level? It requires focus and it requires choosing what's important to you and what's your end goal, and really asking yourself, is what I'm doing moving me closer to where I want to be, or is it actually a distraction taking me away from that?
That brings up, I think, the issue of saying no, which I think can be really hard for some of us, especially the women.
Yes, absolutely.
How do you say no and be a good person?
Well, I think sometimes when we say yes all the time, we're not actually being good. We think we are, and we think that that's somehow what we're supposed to be doing. But actually, when we're saying yes to everybody around us, we're kind of giving everybody a little piece of us instead of really showing up and being 100% present, right? Where you are in the moment. It's kind of the fantasy about multitasking and having multitasking be seen as something that's valuable. And actually what it does is it actually distracts from what you're doing, right? You really want to show up and get very clear and focused about how you're spending your time and who you're spending your time with. And then choosing, again, is this in alignment with what I said was important to me? I think everything kind of comes back to that place of your core values. What do you really want to have happen? Because your results are going to show up in alignment with your actions, right? A certain amount of actions that we do on a regular basis is how we get results. So it's not very sexy and exciting, but if we want to have, great health, we have to eat certain foods on a regular basis, right? We actually have to do this. We have to exercise, we have to move our bodies. And, money is one of those conversations that you and I both share, a heart for healing this conversation for people, having it be a place where it's not so hard. It's actually great habits that lead you to financial independence. It's not about you need to make $1 million. It's about how do you actually choose to live and give your attention in a way that's loving and focused and positive, again, in your daily habits.
You brought up values a number of times. So I'm curious, what are your core values from which you make your decisions?
Thank you. Thanks for asking. Really for me, without my health, none of it matters. And I think that it's one of those places why I'm kind of meeting you today. It's so casual because I literally just come from a CrossFit class. So, I'm a little rough right now, but it is that piece of just, again, taking care of your body, being strong is kind of, I teach a whole course on the circle of life, right? Which is really, we take all of our core values as things that really matter to us, Morgana, and how are they showing up not only in our daily lives at work, but how are they showing up in our relatedness to others? How are they showing up in our habits? How are they showing up in our mission, our vision for our companies? And, for me, having a healthy environment is very important. Having really intimate relationships and having true, authentic connections with people around me. I want to have that experience not only with my family members and my friends, but also with my clients and with people that I meet at the grocery store. I mean, it's actually such a gift to actually have an authentic connection with other humans. And I know that none of us can do it alone. So I think that that's the place, recognizing the human assets that we have. Where there's so many of us that are working from home and working in front of a computer, and it's so easy to be kind of in this zone where we feel really lonely and isolated. And yet it's through community that we grow. It's through connection that we actually grow. For me personally, one of the things that I know is not everybody's core value is around enduring contribution. I've been very, very blessed, as I tell the story about in Stop the Spinning, to move from a place of a pretty rough childhood and a pretty rough experience to a place that is blessed and well and healthy and loving and abundant. And so for me, there's a part of my personal values that says that the giving actually causes the growing, that there's something about giving back that actually expands us as human beings exponentially. So that's one of my core values. Do you want me to keep going? Because I have about 7 of them. But
yes, keep going.
Place, right? A whole chart, right? I value adventure and fun as a way of learning. I think that there are folks that are really made to value security and safety, and that works for them. And for me, it's like the more I'm on the edge, the more fun it is, the more I feel expanded. So that's a way of growing. And that really, again, that growth itself is something that's so important. If I'm alive and breathing, I want to be improving, not in a way that as a young woman, I wanted to be good enough, right? Like I wanted to be seen and I wanted to be, gosh, if I could just be good enough, then I would, matter. Not in that way so much now that I'm almost 50. It's more the place of, I get to, right? Like I get to keep growing. I get to keep showing and expanding up and showing up and expanding. And that feels like a big gift to me.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about your story? You talk about starting with a rough background. I mean, we look at you now and you're beautiful and you're successful and it all looks really easy for you. So can you give us a little bit of your story of how you got here?
Well, let's just say the truth. It is really easy for me in perspective of like right now we're working with the water bearers to bring fresh water to 1 million people over the course of 30 days. And that's not a conversation I've ever had to deal with. This is the place that I think in developed nations, we have so much affluence and we don't really realize what the perspective is. And I think you and I might have been on an interview together with Amethyst when I was talking about this recently, about how when we were doing research for Limitless Women for the book we just published, we found that close to 3 billion people, like 2.8 billion people, are still living on something less than $3 a day. The statistics change. $2, $2.50, something like that. But it's really insane for us to think about what would it look like to live on $1,000 a year or less. And if we look at the numbers of 3 billion people and there's 7.5 billion, this is a big number. This is a big deal, right? So what I can say is that I was blessed to have some amazing experiences and people who saw me when I couldn't see myself. And that, my parents were doing the best they could with what they had. Neither one of them had an education to speak of. Neither one of them had grown up with affluence or privilege or rights. And the world was a very scary place for them. Right. It was the world was out to get you. And they were very isolated people. So a lot of when I talk about kind of the core values and what matters to me today, those are all things that I've chosen to make my life. And I think that that's what's important for somebody who's listening here, is that where you are currently, where things are a struggle or things are hard, the fact that you're hearing that it can be different actually can create a shift for you energetically. Then you have the opportunity to go out and find how, right? If somebody else is doing something, it can be done. So that's the place, it's like those people over there, they have this, they have that. Like, look, we all have very similar hopes and dreams. We all get up and pee in the morning, right? If things are working, and it's a good day, we poop. It's like, we're just people. And it's not about the money. It's not about the affluence, but there's something that comes in freedom. And for me to be able to do the work that I'm doing now, there's a tremendous luxury that came as a result of people being generous with me when I didn't see myself. And more importantly, me choosing habits and choosing focus in the areas that would move me closer to a place of independence financially, independence in time, and independence emotionally, right? Not being so caught up in the struggle and the drama of, my childhood. Just in a nutshell, there was a tremendous amount of violence, and I was sexually molested from the time I was 2 until I was about 12. And, that maybe very confused on a lot of levels, right? There was a lot of stuff that didn't really work well in my brain and when it came to relatedness. And to be having that conversation today, what I know is that your past doesn't define your future. And what you're capable of is so much more than you know, but you can't do it alone. So I love what you're doing, really, Morgana, bringing love, you bring so much value to everybody through your work. And, love shines. You can feel it. Yeah.
I am so grateful to you for sharing your experience so candidly. And in my experience, with men and women, our relationship with money and our relationship with worth is so tied up for, I would say, most of the people that I've encountered. Our sexuality is really tied up in that. There's so much shame, and we have such, I think, struggles just having human bodies. So that you've come from that background and created a life on your terms with so much love and empowerment for other women, I just, it brings tears to my eyes. Thank you so much. I think, bless you.
Well, thank you. And what I can tell you is that I'm really clear that, each one of us has something that's happened for us in our life to bring us to this point, right? And we're having, whoever is with us that is joining us right now or listening to this in the future, they've had a very powerful, important experience that's brought them to where they are right now. And if we can use those experiences to be of service to others, what could be more than that? Nothing. What a gift. Actually have more than enough to be able to give to another is a very humbling experience for a person who felt that they weren't enough or that there wasn't enough, right? To move from that end of the spectrum to the place where not only is there enough, but I have enough to also give. That's really a gift of abundance. I think it's a divine gift. I think it's a great blessing.
So what steps could you share with our audience based on what you've learned to help the person who's just tuning in now get started? Perfect.
Well, if I may, I'd love to offer everybody a free copy of my book, Stop the Spinning. Oh. We don't have it set up yet for Limitless Women because we just published yesterday, I think. We published on International Women's Day. And that's part of why I'm like, I'm running around like a crazy person. We just published yesterday. So we had a whole campaign. It was a lot of fun. And my publisher, just give him a shout out, Jesse, he just did such a beautiful job of taking care of us. And so, yeah, it was good. So for the first book, Stop the Spinning, I think is really, I wrote that book because somebody handed me Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, when I was 20 years old, and I weighed 98 pounds, and I lived with a man that beat me on a regular basis. That was actually my normal. And that would be normal considering where I grew up. Like, that's what I knew. I knew that to be the way of the world. So somebody handed me that book, and it really started changing my brain. It started changing the trajectory of where I came from, where I am today. And so when in 2011, people kept saying, where's your book? 2012, where's your book? I'm like, what book? But I started thinking about like, what would be the steps? What would be the things that really moved me from a place of struggle to a place of ease and grace? And so in that book, and the URL is basically Laura Free Book. We try to make it simple. So if you want to share that, so easy, right? So, so Laura Free Book, you can get a free copy of it. But in that book, I can tell you that I share, it's not a long book, it's like 80 pages, but I share an awful lot about lessons that I learned about having money be a place of overflowing abundance. That's really, chapter 2 is the majority of the whole book. And I think there's some just habits that would be helpful around your relationship to money, how you speak to money, how you relate to money, how you track money. Getting the education that you need. So I think that would be super helpful. And just recognizing that every one of us has the same 24 hours in a day. Please don't wait until you have what I call the 3 Ds, death, divorce, or disease, come into your life before you recognize that, hey, this is a wake-up call and I better get it together. And that's all too often what catalyzes people to get into action, right? They have a big wake-up call. For me, it was a divorce. It wasn't something I was expecting. And and I was 100% responsible. So it's not that it happened to me, but at the same time, I think when we get shaken, help me with the words, we get shaken down to our roots and we get to choose, how about choosing really into a bigger dream than what you thought you could have, right? I get often asked about living the life of my dreams. And I promise you, I never dreamed this life. I didn't, when I talk about living the dream, I couldn't, as a young woman, fathom that I would have the freedom and the resources to be able to answer the call when I get invited to come to Ecuador and deliver water filters next Sunday, right? Like next Sunday. So, those types of freedoms are really a beautiful gift. And, again, the more we all come together, the more support each other. And I know you are just such a testament to this too, Morgana. We all can lift each other as we climb, which is one of my good mentors and friends, Sandra Yancey says, lift as you climb.
Oh, yeah.
So beautiful.
When I saw that your topic was going to be live the dream, the first question I thought is, what is the dream? Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that? What is the dream?
Well, I think the dream is really, in my understanding, is the freedom piece, right? I mean, I think there's this whole group of folks that are out in the world trying to find their path and trying to find their way and learn how to make money. And I always say, okay, great, then what? When you actually do this exercise, and I don't know if you lead people in this exercise, so if you do, I apologize if it's redundant, but it's one of the greatest exercises. It's free and it's simple. And it's simply that if you actually won a big lottery, like the big Mamba Jamba, like more money than Oprah Winfrey lottery, right? Like you couldn't even possibly spend it all, blah, blah, blah. What would your life look like differently? Like, what would you be doing with your days? How would you spend your time? And really, we lead this when we're doing a live event. Is we lead this and say, like, what time would you get up? What would you be wearing? Who would you be hanging with? What would you be eating? And what's so fascinating for folks, sorry, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you what happens, is what happens for most of us, myself included, when I first started doing this discovery process, is that the things that I wanted to spend my time on had nothing to do with money. It had to do with, my children were little at the time when I started designing my work. And it was around, like, gosh, going hiking with them or reading books with them. And now I see myself, because my daughter's having a breakdown today because her iPhone broke. And she's calling me. I'm like, sorry, I've got an interview, which is one of the reasons I didn't put makeup on, because I'm like dealing with stuff. Life is happening, right, for all of us. And I said, we can get through this. This is a first world problem. This is not a real problem. But I want to stop myself and say, yes, I have an interview and I really want to honor your time and be on time and be great for you, even if I don't have makeup on. But am I walking my talk and being related for that child that I gave birth to? I mean, she's 19, but she's still a young woman, right? Like, remembering that our actions, coming back to that, how are our daily actions in alignment with what we say is important to us? Yeah. So
I know you've talked a lot about passion. So how does somebody find their passion? What does passion mean?
So good. So good. When I first started being asked to speak and lead, I was like, how can I help you? Do you need a check? Like, I didn't know. Like, people were like, hey, will you come talk to us? I'm like, about what? And they're like, how do you do it? And I'm like, how do I do what? Right? We're all doing our stuff, right? And what I realized is that one of the gifts that I kind of had unconsciously was this tremendous amount of energy. And it has to do with really, again, having the luxury of pursuing the things that I'm passionate about. So how you geek out on something, like somebody asks you a question about it and then you're like, oh my gosh, and you start talking about it and you just can't shut up. Yeah. I so want to surround myself with geeks in every area, because then I don't, I can geek out about what I geek out about, right? I mean, I can geek out about things that I'm passionate about. You can geek out about the things you're passionate about. My daughter can, Jessica can, everybody can geek out about what makes them excited. And then we all, again, come together and create this beautiful mastermind, this beautiful community of people that have their own superpowers. Like, I don't want to have your superpower. My life is full with my own superpowers, as is, anybody else who's listening to this right now. You have certain things that you're really great at that you love to do. The more you spend your time in that space, the more fluid life becomes. And if you can figure out how to monetize that with Morgana's guidance, you're going to find the sweet spot in life. And then life is, again, do you want to have a life that's you're going through the motions, or do you want to have a life that you're excited to get out of bed every day? This is a pretty easy question for most of us.
So it's sounding to me like there's a lot of choice involved. You find the thing that you want to geek out on. And, it keeps I'm having this thought as you're speaking, that I hear people speak two ways. One is there are the people who you have strength on your face.
If I have an orb, I have a green orb today. How beautiful! Yes, yeah. Right. Yeah.
But now you look, yeah. There are kind of two ways of living in life, and one is where your circumstances make your decisions for you, and then there's the way of where you make yourself bigger than your circumstances. Can you talk about that?
Look, it can be hard. I get that. I'm not trying to poo-poo people's experience or the struggle, but I also know that there's some value in understanding how, I heard Adam Markell say this recently at a Reignite event where he talked about how people are addicted to struggle. And I think that there's some big truth in that. I think that we get hooked into the drama. I think we feel that we have meaning when it's hard. And no, it doesn't serve. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve me. If we actually could take our energy and our passion and be in service in a place that is a higher love, that's really about helping each other out. It's really about connection and connectivity. Some of the things that we think are problems actually start to dissipate. They start to go away, right? Because the things that we give attention to grow and expand. And if we give attention to drama, this is what we're going to get. We're going to get more drama. And, I'm always trying to remember where I hear these amazing quotes because they change my life. Another one was Byron Katie. I think is her name, Byron Katie. I heard her interviewed with Oprah years ago. And I don't know if you've heard her say this before, but
I love her.
Well, and I don't really know her work. I just know this one quote. So I'm like telling the world about this quote because it's just a life changer for me. And that is that she said that when she decided to stop taking on everybody else's crap, she probably didn't use that word. That's my word. Other people's stuff. And she said, okay, like when something comes across my path, is it my work? Is it your work, Morgana? Or is it actually God's work? What actually can I have an opportunity to be of service of? The serenity pair, like God, show me the difference, right? Like what I can, give me the courage to change. When people get super, super, super protective and selective about how they spend their time, money stops being an issue. I don't know how to make it any more simple than that. But when you really look at where you spend your time and how you spend your time and who you spend your time with, there's some relationship, and you probably can explain it to me, that actually when you start valuing yourself and valuing your experience and valuing your time, that the money actually becomes the easy part. Now, I have friends who have multi-million-dollar businesses, and every time I say that, they're like, oh my gosh, where are you from? I'm like, well, I don't know. But I can pretty much tell you that money is not the struggle when you're trying to figure out how do we put water in the hands of mothers so that they don't have to decide, do I give my child this dirty water that might make them sick, or do I let them die of dehydration? This is a conversation that anytime I'm feeling sorry for myself, it doesn't take very long to get a reality check of what's going on in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered the question, if I was just
I think you did. I think you did. There's a way in which I think we all need to find our own way. Mm-hmm. But, looking at our priorities and that huge piece about, is this my work or your work or God's work? I would confess to being a bit of a drama junkie too. I see the meme on Facebook and I'm all upset.
Oh, honey. Like, oh, sweet pea. Yeah, because, we're all doing the best we can with what we have, and we're all having a human experience, as you spoke a few minutes ago, right? I mean, that's the piece. It's like we know what we know from what we've come from. And the beauty is that every day we wake up, we have another choice. And anyone who is having the luxury of listening to your show or seeing your show has choice. And they may not have all the choices that you and I have, Morgana, but they have some choices. And those choices around where they choose to focus will really directly affect the results they get. And here's another piece when you're saying about like yes and no. We had that conversation a little while ago about yes and no, saying yes. When we're doing for other people their work, it's kind of like having a baby. If you just carried the baby around until they were like 5, they would never learn to walk. Right? You ever watch a baby learn how to walk and they get up and they fall down, they get up and they fall down? We're like that in life as 49-year-olds. You know, we're out there, we're trying new things, and we're messing up, and we're falling back, and then we try something new, and you know, we're on this beautiful adventure of life. And money is simply a form of energy, in my experience, it comes to us and through us in direct proportion to our service. So how do we get to serve more people? And then that in turn fills us up in a way that is so magnificent. There's no amount of money that I could ever give you or experience myself that would be more meaningful than the experience of being able to see another person's joy and knowing that you were able to contribute to that. That's the greatest gift that I know.
In my experience, our ability to attract and keep money in our lives is 100% related to how we feel about ourselves.
Yes, ma'am.
And everything you've shared, service to something that you are passionate about. You are not delivering water as a bargain with God so that maybe then you'll be good enough in his eyes. You're doing it because this is to help people, gives you really true, authentic joy. And setting priorities and saying no to the stuff that isn't in alignment with your value and getting very specific about where you put your time and your energy and your resources is going to automatically make you feel better about yourself because you're valuing yourself.
Well, can I just give another little tip, if I may?
Please. Please.
Because I really, you know, and again, we're all on this journey together. So in 2014, and I know I've shared this with you before, I said, okay, I know that if I actually put my stake in the sand and say, okay, this is my work, and I know that I can make a difference for others. And there's something in being the example of stretching. And trust me, there's times when it's the same game or zero. I promise you, if you are struggling at $50, you will struggle at 500, 5,000, 500,000. I'm sorry to tell you, you take yourself wherever you go. This is what it is, okay? So there's nights, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have tuition, we've got things, right? We've got life going on. In the end, there's something about stepping into that place that you actually want to go, even before you're ready, and before you feel like you have all the tools, where it gives the universe an opportunity to kind of provide gifts to you. And you've got to be ready to receive. You know, this is, it's been a huge lesson for me, huge. 2015 was my year of receiving. I realized I was not a good receiver. And I think I talked about this before, is that somebody gives you a gift, right? Somebody tries to hand you something, and you're like, oh, no, I've got it. It's actually unkind. And a friend had said that to me. She said, you know, you always come and you give, but you don't allow us to give to you. And I was mortified because I love this woman and I didn't want to hurt her feelings. But at the same time, I started thinking, and I thought, well, my gosh, what else has God been trying to give me and the universe provide for me that I've been like pushing away because I've been so busy and so important with myself. So there's a place of listening. There's a place of being still. There's a place, and that only happens when you're choosing very wisely about your time. Right? If your mind and your brain is all caught up in stuff that's not your business and that you really have any control over, and it's monkey mind, you could be missing out on something that really wants to be gifted to you. Yeah.
I know that you believe it's really important to surround yourself with people of vision who hold you accountable. Can you talk about why that's important?
Yes, I can. And here's the deal. Your friends and your family members, they love you and they love the way you are. And a lot of us have patterns with the people we love, and we're just in it, right? Like, so we've taught them how to treat us. We've kind of been taught how to treat them. And, you know, those of you that have companies or your work relationships with other people, you kind of have this thing like who does what, and, you know, you push buttons of your partners and your kids. Like, you know, we always have these kind of games. So the place where expansion happens and where we actually grow is when we have the courage to speak what we would like to see happening. Not like someday I'm gonna, but this is the year that I'm going to do this. And then if you don't have people around you that actually hold you powerfully to your own cause, to your own speaking, it's too easy to slip back into your old habits, and then you don't get the results that you want, right? So there's something about accountability. You know, I want friends around me that say, okay, you said this is what we were going to do. And then I'm like, oh, definitely, let's go do it, right? Because I said we're going to do it, so let's do it. And, you know, there's a responsibility. There's a responsibility of what we put out in the world. And we won't hit everything, but we'll hit an awful lot, especially if we have community. You know, it's for those of us who grew up feeling that the world was a little scary and that we couldn't really trust other people, it wasn't easy for us because we've been hurt and our little childhood minds could only do what it could to figure that out, right? It's scary to learn to trust. And yet through the trusting and through community and through surrounding yourself with people that see you, when you hit the hard days and you have love and support, everything's possible.
How do you find the right people, especially for someone who was trained that the abuse of people is normal, or the cheaters or the liars? How do you find the right people?
I'm going to think about how I answer this for you. There's something in this, Morgana, and I would love your perception on this as well, but there's something in this for me that really gets that every person is doing the best they can with what they have. And when we are in judgment and we think that people should be a certain way, there's a reflection that's coming back to us, right? So if you meet somebody and you fall in love, which is so yummy, you know, it's great, but there's something that's being reflected back, right? There's something beautiful about yourself that's being reflected back, and you have to be willing to receive that, right? And sometimes when we meet somebody and they trigger us, we got to be willing to look at, okay, what's that about me that I'm not feeling so excited about, right? I literally have a great little story to tell you that, you know, I just moved to Mission Viejo. We've only been here a few weeks. And
oh, so you're in my part of the world now. I
am. So let's get together in person and not just on a computer, girlfriends, right? Like, let's not just wait until it's December to hook up in Santa Cruz at the JV retreat. I want to see you, right? Yeah, let's get together. So, so an interesting thing happened because I needed a PA, I needed a personal assistant on the ground, because part of what, you know, again, this is a tremendous luxury I understand in my life. But in order for me to be able to go out and do my philanthropy work and get out there, somebody's going to take care of the house and my husband, make sure they have, you know, he has and everybody has what they need here. So hired a PA. She showed up the first day for work 30 minutes late. I said, okay, well, stuff happens, it's traffic. Second day, she shows up 30 minutes late. And I'm like, oh, you're fired. And she said, what? And I said, you know, I think you are such a nice person. I love you. I love what you've done for me online. But I have to tell you that, like, I need to hire people to my weaknesses, and I tend to be completely overscheduled and, you know, have so many opportunities that I need people around me that are really, like, in their integrity for the places where I get loose, right? And so if that's a place like today, just even being late on your call for 2 or 3 minutes, it affects you, and I don't want to have that. So I really try to surround myself with people that are going to help me. My assistant's gone for the day, so sorry, you just got me. But, you know, there's something about hiring slow and firing fast. This happens in relationship, right? So there's no, first of all, there's no lack of amazing humans. If there's 7.5 billion people on the planet, there are amazing people out there that have superpowers that you need. What requires having an amazing community is getting super clear about your own weaknesses and strengths, right? And looking for the people, like I said earlier, that geek out on that thing that you do not want to do. Like, hang out with them. Let them do it, because you'll like, through osmosis, you'll get served, right? And then you can bring your superpower to their party. And that builds a beautiful community. It's the same thing in our team. We actually do personality profiles. Really inexpensive. Gallup Strength Finders is like $10 a person. But I try to hire, we just hired an online project manager, and I looked at her and I looked at my program director and I said, this is a perfect match, because they had none of the same traits. Two brilliant, successful, intelligent women with 5 completely different strengths. I was like, rock on, we've got a match. Right? Beautiful. So just look, it's like a fun puzzle. Does that help?
And well, actually, yes, it did a lot. I remember before I met my husband, I dated hundreds of people. I was the one date wonder of,
I love you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my attitude was, because I got like super power laser vision on people who are not a match. And my attitude was, you are wonderful and you are just not my person. You know?
Exactly.
You are
and
the
they
right
need to be wonderful for
person,
somebody else.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah. And what about every day? You know, here's the thing. So it's March 9th, 2016. I hope it's okay that I'm saying that and I'm not messing up your recordings. You know, there's something about every day that we're alive and breathing. The one thing that we know for sure is that we're a little closer to the end of this life. So how do we choose to spend that time? And, you know, you said it about the piece of money and how it shows up. I get asked to speak a lot about how to make money and how to have all this time freedom. Like, what people would just think it's just some mystery, and it's around systems and things that I'm sharing with you. But the piece that's underneath for most people is this feeling of not enough, this feeling that somehow I'm not enough, this feeling that there's not enough. You know, there's enough cash on the planet. I have a friend who said that, you know, she had done the math through somebody at the International Monetary Fund, and there was enough for something like $40 million per human, per 7 billion humans. Like, that's how much cash exists on the planet. So I have no idea if that's the correct number, so don't quote me on that, but let's just say it was a million billion, like whatever that number, there's no lack. There's no lack of water on the planet, right? There's no lack of food on the planet. What there is a lack of resourcefulness. So when somebody is trying to build a business and they can't find clients or they can't find team members, I encourage them to consider, where is it inside of you or inside of me that feels like there's not enough? Because if I actually realize, you know, I can't, knock on wood, I struggle with, if there's such a thing, or I'm fascinated by the opportunity to grow my businesses as quickly as I can so that I have the opportunity to give jobs to amazing people, right? Like, I think there's so many good people out there that I don't have enough jobs for all of them, and I want to, you know, and jobs in a place where they are autonomous and brilliant and shining in their superpower, like whatever they geek out on, that's what we want on our team, right? And so that's the piece, right? As we grow exponentially, the big secret to making more money is serving more people, and however you're able to do that matters. It really does matter.
I love that you shared that. That is so beautiful. One of my mantras is that the problem is never a lack of resources, it's a lack of resourcefulness.
Yes, very much so. And everything that we need is actually provided for us. And that's the piece that I encourage folks to have an open mind about, because it sounds a little woo-woo, right? And at the same time, if you actually slowed down a little bit and said, you know, if it doesn't appear that you have the answer, like, what would the answer look like? Or who around me could help me with this, right? Like, there's that place of receiving, instead of somehow feeling that it's on us. Who do I know? You know, who else would maybe have an answer for this if I'm not having the answer? Who could I reach out to? And people love to get advice. Are you kidding me? You're going to call them and ask them for their advice. They're going to be so thrilled. They're like, oh my gosh, you were thinking about me? Yay! It's a good thing. So learn to ask and also learn to receive. So sometimes the gifts come without us even asking, but we've got to be present. We've got to be in the moment so we can actually see them and hear them.
Beautiful. So we're just about out of time. Is there one last thing you could share with us about true abundance?
Yeah. Yes, many things. And we have to have more compassion for ourselves, Morgana. We need more patience. We need more compassion, more understanding, more empathy and sympathy for our bodies and our human selves going through this experience, because the world is moving so very quickly right now, and our cells are trying to catch up. And it's not to be afraid. It's not that the singularity is near. The singularity is already here. The robots are in charge. It's all happening. Just get over it, okay? And what would make your life really feel fantastic and amazing? And just know that you deserve that. You really do. And it requires you being kind and patient and taking care of yourself, and knowing that when your well is full, right? When you're well fed, when you've had movement, when you feel good, it's much easier to give to others. But it's really hard to give to others when we're depleted. And it goes back to that saying yes all the time, right? If we don't draw some really strong boundaries, I encourage everybody to consider, what are the things that you truly value? What gives your life meaning and gives you juice? And remember to stay in practice and action with those things. And so if you go to a job, like let's say you're working at a grocery store, bring your values with you. You know, if you have a value around contribution, bring that smile to the person that you see. Just bring the love. It's there. Your opportunities are everywhere around you. And it's not something that somebody else is doing to you. Everything is happening for you. So remember to give yourself some peace and some compassion and slow down a little bit and listen.
Beautiful. And one last reminder, your book will be available at what link?
Oh, thank you for asking. So sweet of you. So they can grab my book at www.Laura, that's my first name, Laura, free, FREE, book, BOOK. If you go there and log in, you'll get a free copy of Stop the Spinning, Move from Surviving to Thriving. I hope that it helps you and that you find some value there. Write to me. I'm easy to find on Facebook. And so it's my pleasure to share that.
Thank you so much. You're just such an angel. And all the links
right back at you. Thank you. Love you so much, Morgana. Thank you for the opportunity. I love you.
I will see you soon.
Thank you, Bunny. Bye.
That concludes our conversation for today. You can get all the links that we talked about and lots of resources at morganaradio.com. And as always, if you like what you heard, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the Morgana Radio podcast. Your instructions on how to do this are also at morganaradio.com. That's it for now. I will see you next week with another fascinating guest expert on Morgana Radio.